All right, today we're going to be solving equations by completing the square. So this is yet another way that we're going to be solving quadratics. So we did solve by factoring before the break. We did solving by using the square roots, which is just when you solve for x. We did solve by graphing, which is when you find the x-intercepts. And today we're going to be completing the square. So when you solve by completing the square, you can do it with trinomials, which is why it's beneficial. It's one of the ways that you can solve trinomials without a calculator. All right, but part B, we are just going to get used to the idea of what a perfect square trinomial is. So first of all, 25. Why is it a perfect square?
Because 5 and 5 split.
Right, because 5 times 5 is 25, or the square root of 25 is 5. So when I start talking about x squared plus 10x plus 25, what two numbers multiply to give me 25 but add to give me 10? 5 and 5. So I can write this as x plus 5 times x plus 5. And what do you notice about these two factors?
They're the same.
They're the same.
Squared, right?
Right, so you can write this as x plus 5 squared, and that is what a perfect square trinomial is.
That's it?
It's not going to be it until part C, so just hang in there for me.
Oh, that's a lot.
Too easy.
Yeah. All right, numbers 1 and 2. So on this one, all I want to do is determine whether it's a perfect square trinomial or not. So what two numbers multiply to give you 48 but add to give you 14?
6 and 8.
6 and 8.
Oh, quick math.
So you have x plus 6, x plus 8. So is that going to be a perfect square trinomial? No. Because it's not the same. Okay, on number 2. What two numbers multiply to give you 49?
7.
Negative and negative.
Yes, -7 and -7. They both have to be negative because we want to make a negative 14, but multiply to get a positive 49. So x,
Sometimes we just tell right off the bat.
yeah. Hopefully the goal is you can just be able to look at this and factor it in your head without having to write this step down. All right, so is this a perfect square trinomial?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So you can write it as x minus 7 squared. And yes, it is a perfect square trinomial.
That's so cool, bro.
All right. Oops, sorry. Part B. All right, so part B, we're going to get used to the idea of just completing the square. So now I'm going to give you a trinomial, but I'm not going to tell you what the last number is. I want you to come up with the number that will make this a perfect square trinomial. All right, so we're going to do it in 2 steps. First step is divide. So we're going to take 8, and we are going to divide it by 2. You always divide by 2. All right, you're always going to divide that middle number by 2. And we get 4. So that's the first step, divide by 2. Second step, square it. So 4 squared is 16. And that is your magical number that is going to complete the square.
That's so cool.
So tell me again, what's the first step?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. What's the second step?
Square it.
Square it. Very good. All right, and so if I wanted to factor this and write it in the square form, what two numbers multiply to give me 16 but add to give me 8? 4 and 4. So I can write this as x plus 4 squared.
Oh.
And if you are observant, you might have noticed that those two numbers are the same. And they will always be the same if you did it correctly.
Oh, that's so cool.
Alright, so let's do number 4. Alright, so for number 4, when I'm trying to come up with my magical number that will make this a perfect square, what's the first step?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. So what's negative 12 divided by 2?
Negative 6.
Very good. And then what do?
Square it.
Square. What's negative 6 squared?
30, it's positive 36.
36, yes. Keep in mind, because we are always going to square, your magical number will always be positive.
That's so cool.
Okay, always positive. Alright, now if I wanted to write this as a perfect square in square form,
X minus 6 squared.
x minus 6 squared.
I need my white out.
And you can always check because those numbers will be the same.
That's great. Thank you.
I need my one.
Alright, so we have now completed the square. And we are going to use that to help us solve now. So, last part of today is solving by completing the square. I put the steps over here to the right, so I will color coordinate for you.
Yes, please. I love that.
Dang, who fell down the stairs?
That's what I'm late and I'm writing down here.
Alright, so first step is going to be to rewrite so all the x terms are on one side and the constants are on the other. What that is saying is I want to move the 7. Because if you look up here when I practiced completing the square, I didn't have a number here. I want to come up with the number that will make this a square. Does that make sense? Alright, so I don't want a 7 here. I want it to be a blank. So 7 is in the way. So I'm going to move it. I'm going to add 7. So I have x squared minus 6x plus blank, and then 7 is now on the other side. I don't have to worry about it yet. So now this looks like my previous problems that I did. So part B, I'm going to complete the square. I gotta come up with my magical number. So what's the first step?
Divided by 2.
Divide by 2. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. And then what?
Square it.
Square it. So negative 3 squared is
9.
9. So your magical number that you are going to add to both sides is going to be 9. Now, notice you have to add it to each side. This is how this is different than these other guys because this guy has an equal sign. And so whatever you do to one side of your equal sign, you have to do to the other, or else your equation is not balanced, and that is not allowed in math. So if you add it to one side, make sure you add it to the other, keeping your equation balanced.
Is this balanced equation?
All right. Next, we are going to factor. So I want to make this into my perfect square. So what two numbers multiply to give me 9, add to give me negative 6?
Negative 3.
Negative 3. So I'm going to have x minus 3, and I know it's going to be squared because that's the whole point of what I'm doing. And you can always check because that number should be this number right here. All right, so I factored. And what is 7 plus 9?
16.
16. Okay, and then now I'm going to find the square root of each side. So now I'm just going to start solving for x. So square root, square root. Every time I square root, I have to put a
Plus minus, I just learned that.
a plus minus. And what is the square root of 16?
Plus
4.
minus 4.
Plus minus 4. It's not plus minus square root of 4 because the square root of 16 is just 4. Plain old 4. Okay, so don't be square rooting too many times. Alright, and then last step, E, solve for x. So what's the last thing I need to do? Plus 3. Okay. Now, this might be a little tricky here. The plus minus are two separate numbers. You have positive 4 and you have negative 4. So you have to treat it separately. What is positive 4 plus 3? 7. And what is negative 4 plus 3? Negative 1.
Oh.
I like how she immediately says no.
I understand.
Okay?
For some dumb reason, my brain wanted to combine them. Bruh.
Alright, flip it over on the back. We got a couple more problems to do. I'm going to do at least one of these, and I'm going to do one of these. So, we'll do 6 and 9. Alright. Number 6. What is the first thing I'm going to do?
No, wait, mine. Plus.
Wait, what?
I got blank, so I can't bet.
Rewrite
Really?
so all X terms are on one side.
Okay. Alright, so, wait. What do I do?
Rewrite all X terms so that they're all.
Yes, rewrite so the X terms are over here, and I'm going to do that by adding 4. Adding 4.
So since it's a subtraction style, would you bring it down into subtraction style?
Like here?
Yeah.
And we'll do the opposite, so we'll add. So like on this, well, this one, yeah, we did the opposite too, so we added. If it was like on number D, on 8, we would minus.
And so whenever you bring it down to the blank, it would be subtraction sign still.
No, the blank will always be plus, because no matter what, you'll always plus. Alright, quit talking for me, please, so we can do this problem. So, I'm going to add 4. So I have x squared plus 4x. And then, yes, the blank will always be plus. So Haley asked a good question here. We will always add whatever our magic number is.
Because it's always going to be positive, right?
Yep. So the magic number will always be positive.
Okay, then divide by 2 will be
Uh-huh, divide by 2.
which is 2.
Her mind.
Good. All right, so our magic number is 4. Make sure you add 4 on both sides.
Her mind.
Yes, very good. Factor. So now we're going to write this as a perfect square, which is like the whole point of completing the square. So once you get to this step, we now have written this left side, so it is a perfect square now. So what two numbers multiply to give me 4, but add to give me 4?
Positive
2. So x plus 2, which is the same thing as this number.
Then we got a square root.
And yep, and so now we can solve for x. So square root. Every time you square root, you put a plus or minus. And does 8 have a square root? No. So we got to try to break it down. 8 breaks down to 4 and 2. 4 breaks down to
2, 2. So 2 inside, 2 outside.
very good. 2 goes on on the outside, and then this guy stays home. So we have plus minus 2, square root of 2.
Yo el 14 de febrero.
This is where I start.
All right, and then what's the very last step?
But hold on.
So how
X plus 2.
Subtract 2. All right, so we're going to subtract 2, and Isabel says from what? Very good question. From nothing, okay? Nothing. You cannot subtract 2 from this. Okay, so look, all you're going to do, don't make it more complicated than it is. All you're going to do is write it. So negative 2 plus minus 2 square root of 2. All right, you cannot subtract them.
That's a lot of stuff.
I know.
Which is why you have all class period tomorrow to work on it.
It's
So
making my head.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Wait, review.
I died.
We have a test Friday.
Can I retake my place tomorrow?
You can come in the
In the
morning.
morning?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's do number 9, and then I'll be done.
I can make up to 100.
Yeah. All right, on number 9, tell me the first step.
You put X on one side.
Minus 34, x squared plus 6x plus blank equals negative 34.
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2.
Will give you 3 squared in.
Uh-huh.
Give you 9.
Shh, girls in the back, I can hear you.
Put it on both sides.
Put it on both sides.
Factor. Will
Negative 25. That's okay. So x plus 3 squared equals negative 25.
Oh, that's right. I feel like square root.
What's up, Haley?
I'm gonna forget to always add it to both sides.
Yeah. People, yep. That's one of. Very good. So you have an I. You also have a plus minus. And the square root of 25.
You square root that much.
What is the square root of 25?
Positive.
5. So I have x plus 3 plus minus 5i. And if you write I5, that's fine. I don't care. And then what's the very last step? Minus 3. And then you can't combine a real and an imaginary. So
And
minus 3 plus minus, oops, no square root. Sorry, plus minus 5i.